excited. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Anyways, today we have an interesting discussion with Grace Vella. So, first of all, I will introduce myself, and she is going to introduce herself because I want her to do herself justice on the introduction. I don't want to miss anything. So, for me, my name is Matha Fox. So, I'm passionate about helping people achieve their life and financial goals. And one of my favorite topics is relocation to Zimbabwe. Most people are relocating to Zimbabwe, but how many people are actually making it? I've seen videos of people who relocated to Ghana, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, and 2 years later, they're back in the diaspora because they couldn't handle it. The number one reason was the finances. That's why I'm bringing in Grace Vella. She's a financial coach. So she's going to tell us, you guys, a little about herself. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Grace Vella. I own You Deserve Grace, and it's a financial and travel-based platform helping everyone discover their version of rich. And so our platform is expressed on YouTube, on Facebook, as well as our website, deservegrace.com. And on an individual basis, I do coaching. I do coaching based on where people are. So everything from migration, whether you're migrating to Canada or to Zimbabwe, as well as on the tail end, people who have done significantly well with their money and are looking at a planning perspective from there. I used to be a financial advisor, planner. However, because of my back and forth between Zim, I'm no longer a licensed advisor. And so I work as a coach on a referral basis. And so if after talking to someone, so, changes happen in the market or in tax situations, it's important to be talking to understand like what kind of I love traveling and I love finance, but like you said, a lot of people who make travel decisions, it's based on money. And so for sure, a lot of that planning when it's travel or relocating, a big part of what's going to make that decision and make it happen for you is going to be your finances. Yeah.
Yeah, they say money talks, hey.
Yeah, and I think one of the favorite things on Facebook these days is all you need to travel is courage. And someone always says, next time I want to pay for my plane ticket, I'll ask to borrow some of your courage.
That's a good one. Actually, I've never heard that one. Okay. So, yeah. So, one of the reasons why I started Take Back Your Health TBH is to really connect with people. Sometimes I'm in my coaching, I meet people who are at different stages. So, like you, I do the referrals to say, hey, I can guide you up to this point. But if you
Right.
really need financial advice, go to this person. So for me, it's really a good way of doing things because sometimes we get so greedy and think we can do everything. So for me, I've learned to delegate. So that's why I'm calling Grace here. So tell me, good job. Canada is land of opportunity. Why would you go back to Zimbabwe? People are saying, hey, you want to come back to Zimbabwe? People are struggling, people are suffering. Like, what made you change and say, you know what, I'm going?
I think I'm like a lot of people though, because I've never changed. I've always said I wanted to go back.
Yeah.
Some people have it in their hearts to be at home.
Yep.
And there's no amount of like financial planning you could do or reasoning or anything that will convince that person otherwise, right? The best thing you could do is coach that person in a way that will help them make that dream come true so they're less likely to be in despair, right? There's that proverb that a hope, what is it? A hope deferred makes a heart weak, right? So if we lose faith, that's where we end up in situations of like depression and things like that. Whereas a dream realized gives you strength, right? And so you just, some people, it's just in them. I can't explain it to you. I always knew from a young age when we came to Canada that this wasn't where I wanted my eternity to be. My forever was not here. When they're looking at retirement, I know when I was in university, I went to university in the States, we learned that Mozambique at the time had a really low cost of living. And so somebody who retired on a pension in the US could live like a millionaire in Mozambique, right?
Okay.
So sometimes relocating is a matter of finances and saying, how can I'm looking at this pension, I've worked this hard, where can I make it work for me, right? The weather here is really tough in the winter. It's a very common thing for people who are retired to spend the winters outside of Canada, and some of it back. We've got parents with young children that may be struggling with the whole, childcare is expensive, right? So
Okay.
they'll choose to have their children and, maybe raise their children in the younger ages outside the country and then come back to Canada once their children are maybe high school or school age. There's so many different dynamics as to why people choose to relocate. And one of them also is just, when you've been in the diaspora and you've seen things in Canada and you realize now, because you're looking at home with a different lens of exposure, you're like, oh my gosh, we don't have this in Zimbabwe, I want to bring this there. Or there's different things that drive people to say, let me take what I've learned here and bring it back home. And so those are some of the reasons based on the different ages and stuff.
Okay. You know what? You saw, right? I hadn't thought about that. I have a friend, she had kids, right? She was
Mhm.
struggling with juggling. She was just juggling to the extent it was affecting her physical and mental health.
Mhm.
I think people outside they don't realize when you're back home, like the way we grew, you had grandma, grandpa,
Mhm.
auntie, uncle taking care of the kids. But when you are
Yeah.
here, it's you, it's all
Mhm.
on you, and it really affects the mental health. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. You said something. You knew from a young age that you wanted to go back. But the
Mhm.
planning of saying, I am finally going to do it, how many years did it take?
So the first time was when I actually finished university. So I went to university in the States. I'd gone to high school in Canada, went to university in the States. And when I finished, I did my undergraduate thesis in Zimbabwe. So I actually spent time there. And at that point, it was more of a let me go see what Zim is. This is it. Yes. So I left Seattle and went to, Zim, and I was just like, yeah, this is it. So I'd been accepted to a master's program in Amsterdam. So I deferred for a year and said, let me see if I can make this work here in Zim. And then ended up getting married. And my husband at the time was already in Canada. And so we ended up moving back to Canada. So that's how that first relocation happened. And I say that to say, even for students who are thinking of going back to Zim, it doesn't hurt to reach out to professionals in the field, because the way I was able to do my undergraduate thesis, I kept quoting Professor Sam Moyle in agriculture, and he's an economist. He's late now, but I would always reach out to him when I was in school, for help with some of my work. And he would give me like references and stuff, because it was really hard. If you remember back then, there was no Google. We had email, that was as close as we can get, and then library references. And so it was really hard to get Zimbabwean authors that were speaking about the Zimbabwe situation. And that's a big part of all my research papers were based on Zim. And so, because we had that connection throughout my undergrad, it was easy enough for me to ask him for an internship in Zim. And so, even for students who are thinking of going back to Zim, I would recommend, if you know the area that you want to be in, or you're doing a professional course here in Canada, it doesn't hurt to start making those connections over the internet through LinkedIn now, so that when you do go back, right, you can make a plan to go back that will, at least either provide you with work or even an internship, something, an attachment. I think we call them in Zim, but it's possible to get an attachment in Zim from Canada. And you need those transitions because then you understand you have a reason to get up in the morning, right? And networking is a big part of how we build our wealth. And so being able to do that even as a student, that was huge. My next attempt at moving back to Zim was in 2014, I believe. So by then, I know. So this is 10,
I
nine
didn't
years
know
later.
all these things. Like, I'm like, what?
Yeah, so
Okay.
2014 was, I think it was 2014 was the next time. And so by then, I think we had like one property. So the way we did it was we had a basement unit. So they were rented out at different times. So the idea was the basement was rented out at a different time with the lease expiring at a different time than the upstairs, so that in the event that we wanted to come back, we could just time it so that whoever is moving out, whether it's the basement or upstairs, then we can move back. But it allowed us to also have the rental income coming in. And at that point, I'm trying to just, I can't remember why we didn't end up staying, but I think maybe we were still building and the cost of building was just so much. During that time, I had young kids. So at that we were actually able to with the homeschooling and be able to participate in all that without losing attachment to the curriculum. And so, because again, I'm homeschooling, it's easier to hire a tutor in Zim, right? So I think we're paying like 300 a month for someone to tutor two children. And they were helping them with their Canadian curriculum, not with the Zimbabwean curriculum. And then they were doing activities like swimming and tennis and things to help them get out of the house. But because I was managing all that and the construction, there was no time at all to even look at opportunities to make money.
Oh,
Right.
right.
So it was a lot. And then just relying on the rental income in Canada, because at the time my husband was working in Canada and he was just making enough really to support himself and then to also top up. But if we were relying on that, then that meant he wouldn't be able to come.
Oh,
Because you've
wow.
got to make, if you're a two-person household, it's easier because but at the end of the day, you have to create an income that allows that second person to stop working.
Right.
Right. And so if you take away that second income from Canada, then you're less likely to be able to invest in Canada to create assets to move back. Right. Um, I think one thing that we did that I'll share at that time was we had bought a truck in South Africa, and the idea was to get the truck and put it on the road and get contracts. And a lot of people do that. They'll move from industries that they're familiar with to industries they're completely unfamiliar with, right? And then because they see a gap in Zim. And so during that time, that big capital investment did end up not working out and did cost us money. And that was supposed to be the income. That was supposed to be the project that cleared for my spouse at the time to be able to come. And so that's an important thing to remember as well. That if you are doing projects in Zim, how much do you know about that industry, right? And if you know so and so who's done it, how much information are they giving you that's going to be able to make it easy? Because I think we ran into a small problem where the truck was bought in South, and because it was a South African make, we couldn't drive it in South to take it to Zim. You had to transport it to Zim to get the Zim
Oh,
registration. And then once you got the Zim registration, the contracts that were available that would take stuff from like South Africa to Congo, they weren't available for Zimbabwean registered
oh, wow.
and registered vehicles, right?
Oh, my. It's like a
Of like,
nightmare.
exactly, right? So it's a nightmare, and you're running out of money because you're paying for parking where the truck is parked, right? In order to get it on the road, but you can't hire a driver because it's not registered and licensed. And But it was just because we took a big risk on a big investment in something that we knew just enough, but not enough.
Oh,
And
okay.
so,
So
mhm.
no. So before you continue, you are saying even if there's a gap, don't jump into an industry you are not aware of. That's what you're saying. Because you guys, you ended up losing money. So
Right?
yes. So
And
I
kind of
just
starting
wanna
from scratch. Yeah. And
okay.
I'm
Yeah,
not
so
saying don't jump. I was actually talking to someone about this the other day, and they also tried something in the same industry. And one thing they said that I thought was really smart was what they learned from that experience was next time they're in that position, they're and they have that type of capital, they would want to find an existing established company and lease out their own truck to that company. And then just get
okay.
rentals from that company. And I think that's an interesting strategy and works well in different industries. We think about it because in Zim, yes, there's opportunities, especially in capital intensive industries. But when you're coming from here, you don't necessarily have the network for the contracts. You don't necessarily understand how the business on the ground is operating, right? Because everything from payments, you get a contract and then they're going to pay you in Zig, and that's a local currency, right? And if they're going to pay you in the local currency, payments may take 90 days, right?
Wow. Right.
Currency that you're receiving on the other end,
Oh, sorry,
right?
sorry. Let me post this on Facebook. Sorry, sorry, I forgot. Just give me 1 second.
And so while you're
Okay.
doing that, I think I'll say it's funny. I had to come to the library to do this call, so I am limited on time in this room that I was able to book
Oh,
because we
yes.
had a scheduled power outage at our house, right? And so a lot of people are always asking. I get that question about libraries. Yes, there are libraries in Zimbabwe. They're not as fully equipped as our libraries. Some community libraries are better than others because the community around them rallies around the library. Just like here, we have a lot of donor supported places. And so then that makes them, more outstanding. And so if you live in a community, I think Moran Park has a library, but it's not very supported by the community. It doesn't hurt to reach out to the library and say, hey, I love that you guys have a library. What can we do to help? Right?
Oh, like collaboration. So for the people who are just
Donating,
joining,
not collaborating, donating the same way we donate to organizations here, right? Like this library has a sponsor board that
oh, okay.
doesn't hurt to go to our own, institutions within the country and say, how can I help? Yeah.
That's a good
Especially if
idea.
they're in your neighborhood. Especially if they're in your neighborhood. A lot of our neighborhoods, much like North American neighborhoods, need a lot of support, especially the inner city ones, because there's so much attention. Well, you and I both live in the inner city in Edmonton. There's so much attention paid to building new stuff in the suburbs, right? And the new developments that are coming up, that our own schools and our communities are neglected, our pools and our libraries. And so, as people it's the same dynamic in Zim. One of my neighborhood in Edmonton, they moved in before they had kids, and now their kids are graduating, but the high school is finally being built.
Whoa, that's a
And
long
that
time.
happens in Zim just the same, right?
Yeah. So before we continue, if you are just joining us, my name is Nathan Fox, the owner of Take Back Your Health, TBH,
Yeah.
and I have Grace from You Deserve Grace. So she's just giving us an insight and ideas on how to relocate to Zimbabwe. So mainly financial coaching because people go back to their home countries unprepared. So she's just sharing her journey and talking about the trucks. I started a chicken project in Zimbabwe, not
Mm.
understanding exactly. I did a video. Bottom line is we ended up eating all the chicken.
You had a freezer that allowed you to be able to save all those chickens to eat them in time, or
No, like they were still in the chicken coop, right?
oh,
In Zimbabwe, electricity is an issue, so you can't store in the deep
true.
freezer. So every day we had to eat them. And
Your neighbors
but
loved you, eh?
yeah, but now I've learned a lesson. So at the chalet, we are starting the chicken project again. Now we know what to do. Like what you're saying, sometimes it's not failure, it's a lesson to do
Mm-hmm.
better next time. I know because of
Mm-hmm.
your time restrictions,
Yeah.
uh, we're just gonna. I think you need to come back again because I still need to know to hear more. How many
Oh,
more minutes do you have?
I'm good for another 10.
Oh, 10 minutes. Okay. All right. So, what I wanted to ask is like what you were talking about, the collaboration and everything. But how do you recover from such a big loss? Like some people, they will just quit right there. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really, what would I say? I think it's really important to be flexible, right? If you've gone
mhm.
in and I was talking to somebody else about this a couple years ago. It's hard to pivot in the moment when things are really hard, right? Because our brain is clouded. When there's so much going on and things are falling apart, nothing falls apart overnight. We see the signs and we panic. It falls apart slowly, but we're unable to pivot. Like even when you with the chickens, right? As it's happening, you're at 6 weeks, they're not sold. 7 weeks, they're not sold. But there's no part in you at 6 weeks in a day that said, okay, let me sit down and rethink this. Let me walk around to the shops and see what I can do, right? It's so hard to think in the moment. So if you are in a moment where you're sensing failure, and we know these things intrinsically as human beings, we know when something isn't working, whether we listen to our heart or not is a different story, right? And how we listen, I think that proverb that I said, right? Hope deferred makes a heart weak. So the
Yes.
minute that we are dealing with struggle, we lose blood flow to all the important things to be able to think. Like it's such a struggle. And so what's important is to not sit in that depression, right? It's not sit in
Okay.
that valley for too long. And to not think about all the voices around you as well. And it's not that people will say this, like people just want me to fail. Like I don't think anybody actually wakes up in the morning and says, I hope this person fails. And I think the issue, I don't know if you remember when Zimbabwe, North Korea, and Iran and Venezuela were listed as the axis of evil. And there's sanctions on those countries because those four countries have taken land from internationals and from Americans and never given them a dollar back. And the global economy can't have those countries succeeding because then that becomes an international phenomenon, right? It becomes this thing of, oh, you can just steal people's land and not give them a dollar back. It'll happen everywhere around the world. It's about precedent setting. And so sometimes the energy that you feel like you're getting from people that they want you to fail, it's not that. It's the
Oh,
precedent that you're setting that may trigger something in their own heart. And so
okay.
you've got to be cognizant of that, right? That this is nothing to do with you. Nobody wakes up thinking about you as an individual. They're thinking about the impact your actions will have on their life. And so sometimes it means when you're struggling, you need to reach out to other people who will benefit from your success, right? If you've tried something and it didn't work, look around to see who would benefit from my success and let me have conversations with those people because the energy you're
Oh,
going to receive from them will help feed your heart that's weak, right? It's not a matter of cutting off these people that are negative in my life. No, give them their space. Just funnel more. We're limitless people. Our energy is infinite. You just need more abundance. You know what I mean? So find those energies. And in Zim, there's lots of good networking opportunities. Lots of people that are really struggling, but want to do well. Right? Get in those groups. When you're on
right.
groups of people that have that like energy and can still see and really feed off each other is what I would say there.
Okay. I really like this. Let's read Peter. Peter said,
Okay. Thank you.
Why are you
So I've
planning
got
for it?
2 minutes.
Okay,
Go
okay.
ahead.
I'll just read Peter's comment. It says, why planning for retirement in Zimbabwe is hard is because you will have created a life standard in a foreign country that cannot be matched in Zimbabwe, considering the environments are different. That's what Peter
Okay.
is saying.
I want to speak to that. Um, this is controversial. There are people in Canada that are living on a low income and are, or not low income, but maybe let's say like you're middle class in Canada. And they somehow think that in Zimbabwe they should be living in an upper class area. And then they turn around and they want to build in an upper class area in Zim and overstretch themselves and overreach themselves. And then they struggle to maintain their standard of living. And I say that because now that you have cash flow for the first time in your adult life, it's important to not have an overinflated sense of who you are in Zim. People who are renting in Canada and cannot afford to buy a house in Canada during their working years will expect to be able to build a super big house in Zim that's above a standard that they were unable to meet here in Canada. But they won't consider renting in Zim, even though renting in Zim would be a better match for their income, would be a better match for their savings in order for them to be able to live that standard.
Yeah. Actually, no. I have a village. I have a small house. I need to minimize as much as possible, and I'm happy with it. I don't need a big house. I don't need fancy. I live in the village, and I love it. Yeah.
Countries will retire and snowbird, what we call snowbirding, where you spend 6 months outside of Canada and then 6 months in a day in Canada to be able to maintain your pension, right?
Right.
In order to do that, some of them will rent, right? In Florida, in the Philippines, wherever they go, they're going to rent, right? In Mexico, they will rent for those 6 months because they understand that that's what they can afford. But somehow, when we look at ourselves going back to Zim, we don't like this idea of renting in retirement, even if it makes the most sense in order for you to be able to work with your same stable income, like Peter is saying, creating that economic environment. And that's why people are saying when I retire in Zim, I need to be doing a project in Zim because they are creating they're creating a job for themselves rather than looking at it as retirement. You're looking for income. Nobody says I'm going to go to Florida for 6 months of the year and get a job in the US.
Oh, okay.
They're going to retire on the income that they've made in Canada. Do you get what I mean?
Yes.
So if you're going to retire in Zim, make your income in Canada, make your retirement fit your income plan that you've created for yourself here in Canada, and don't rely on the economic environment in Zim.
Thank you so much. Because of your time, we
I
have
know,
to
I'm so
go.
sorry.
Look, maybe we might come back another day. It's up to Grace, so we'll talk about it. And guys, I will let you know. But Peter, thank you so much. Yeah, she has to leave, so we have to go. So this is Meta with Take Back Your Health TBH
Yeah.
with Grace. You deserve Grace. You can find her on Facebook. You deserve Grace, and her name is Grace Chenesai Vela. And
Mm.
Peter, thank you so much.
For the
Sorry, I
engagement.
don't have time to really read because she has
Peter,
to
I was
leave.
going to say for Peter and others, you can go to my website, www.deservegrace.com, and book a consulting session. We can argue over this in, when it's a free 30-minute session. And if we decide we can move ahead, then we could do other sessions after that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you need to get in touch with Peter. He's asking some really good questions. So, Peter, get in touch with Grace. She will, how many minutes consultation is that?
It's a 30 minutes the first time we can have those conversations, see if we can map a way forward that will
Okay.
work. For example, what he's saying about savings and the lifestyle, let's see what we can do with it.
Okay, so Peter, here you are. Yeah, Grace will help you. So, guys, thank you so much. If you found value in this, please let's share this. This was so much fun. Anyways, take
Well,
care.
did
I'll see
too.
you later. Thanks, Grace.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.